So again, Michael Roy here, and we'll do transcription. And I'm, like I said, accompanied with Roger Clarice, who's product manager of Tanzu Community Edition. Myself, I manage our desktop products, Fusion and Workstation. A lot of folks certainly know me. I've been around here for a couple of years now. And so we're very happy to be doing our VMworld session. This will basically be for Fusion and Workstation, the main one that we are doing. We don't have another independent session, so there'll be a little bit of house cleaning up front, and then we'll get right to all the exciting stuff. And so, I don't know why, I think the video is defaulting to Roger for whatever reason, but hope you all can hear me.
I see you.
Cool. Well,
it's showing you me, it's showing everybody else you.
Oh, I see. That's how these things work. In any case, I love putting this poster or this shot up. This is our campus in Palo Alto, and VMware and myself personally, and Roger too, we've been on this journey for a long time. Roger longer than me. Roger, what we call a boomerang. He was at VMware way back in the day, and then took a stint doing a bunch of exciting stuff, and then came back to lead the Tanzu Community Edition effort. And so, we have a journey sort of baked into our DNA, and it's written in everything that we do. And you can kind of see the longevity of where we've gone from this amazing ability to run multiple operating systems on a single computer, going from virtualization and then taking that and abstracting it to, where we are today, which if folks have been following, what I've been doing on the desktop side, you might have seen a little bit of announcements around Fusion on Apple Silicon. Won't be getting into too much detail other than to say that this is out in tech preview at this point, and we're very excited, folks, to give a shot running ARM Linux virtual machines on Apple Silicon devices. And so that's in tech preview for the public right now. Go check it out. That's really what we've been focused on immensely on the desktop hypervisor side of the house this year. It's taken an incredible amount of work and a huge collaboration across all the business units within VMware to make this happen. So this is, like I said, where we've been focusing a lot of our attention this year. As such, as far as major releases go, I just want to make a quick announcement that we won't be introducing a .0 release. So there'll be no Fusion 13 or Workstation 17 this year. We are issuing essentially minor updates to the products. We are going to extend the life of the support of the product. So like the EOGS date, we're going to extend that for another year. And we're going to add features to make sure that we are ready and supporting Windows 11 and macOS Monterey, as well as a whole slew of bugs. Bug fixes really is sort of the name of the game here, and some performance updates here and there as well. Real quick, if you're going to take a screenshot of anything Fusion Workstation related, this will be the one. I mentioned we're going to be extending the EOGS, but of course, there's some other caveats with it. Just take a screenshot, and there'll be a blog sort of posted later on to just describe what this is going to, what some of the caveats that you're going to need to be concerned with the .2 releases. They're, again, free updates for everybody, and we'll be shipping these on basically the next week, the week following, the 14th-ish of October. So, that being said, we've been on this journey, and, we've gone from the very simple use case of running a virtual machine on a computer, running multiple operating systems on the same piece of hardware, to this huge portfolio that we have today. And, if we look at sort of some of the core competencies and what virtualization has sort of abstracted for us, we've, started at the desktop, brought it to the data center, virtual machines. And like, Roger, you had a little bit of a play at the early virtual machines days with GSX, if I'm not correct.
No,
right?
it was ESX, actually. I was the first product manager for ESX.
So yes, couldn't have a better match for Tanzu Community Edition in that regard. The history that we have with ESX, and of course, how that was derived from what was effectively Workstation, right? VMware 1.0. And as we moved up the stack, we had containerization. So we did like vSphere integrated containers, and then we had this thing called native pods. And on the desktop side, we have vCull, which is our kind of a Docker compatible command line for running containers. And then finally, on top of that containerization, we have what was originally, Pivotal Container Service. We have Tanzu now on the data center side. And of course, on the desktop side, we have Kind, which is Kubernetes and Docker, which is actually running using our vCuddle Docker implementation, and then Minikube. And of course, you can always do it yourself the hard way, which, I had the fortune a couple of years ago in San Diego to sit down with Kelsey Hightower and Joe Beta. And Kelsey told me this really amazing story of how the first demo that he ever did of Kubernetes was, done the hard way, quote, and of course, as Kelsey would do. And, he used VMware Fusion to do this demo in San Francisco. So it was really exciting to hear him tell the story, and he ended up using it in his keynote. Of course, what he, the crux of the story was, Fusion broke, and he had to quickly adapt all of his nodes to make it all register, make it all come up. But he was able to do that. It ended up being a great demo, and he made a worthy sacrifice to the demo gods, and so it all worked out. But so today, when we're doing this, it would have been a lot easier. We have, kind of almost 1-2 command type of operations to get Kubernetes running on the desktop in a very lightweight kind of a form factor. On the Mac, we can install Fusion from Homebrew. A lot of folks might know that, not realize that, but you can, without having to go to the website and download it and run through the package installer, you can just go brew install VMware-Fusion, and magic happens, and there you go. And once that's done, you can start the vCuddle system services, run vCuddle kind, and use kind to create a cluster. And likewise, Minikube, we include the Docker machine driver, which I maintain over on GitHub, in Fusion and Workstation. And you can also just get it from Brew or directly from source and use that to run Minikube. So that VMware driver is like the official one that Minikube uses. And it uses basically Docker machine to spin up all the containers that you need to run that really small cluster. And so that's how we've historically had to do things on the desktop, which is either you're going to do it yourself, do it the hard way, might break, might work out, there's some quirks, or we're using one of these sort of integrated solutions. And they're cool, but what they don't really kind of get across is sort of this overall experience that what the Tanzu team has been leading the effort, trying to show the world how we can do Kubernetes in a more integrated way, in a way that doesn't have to have you install all these other components just to get up and running. It's one thing to install Kubernetes, but it's everything else around it that becomes super hard and super complex. And so I'm going to lead it over to Roger to take us through, like, what is Tanzu and
Sure.
What are we going to see today?
So at the highest level, what Tanzu is VMware's modern applications portfolio, the environment for building resilient modern applications, accelerating development, securing the delivery of applications and the software they run on, and simplifying operations. So we provide a great environment for all practitioners, operators, DevOps, developers. And all of this comes together in an integrated portfolio. Now, until now, what you've seen this as are the Tanzu either individual products or more recently as a set of editions. And I'll talk a little more about what each edition, we can go back. I'll talk a little more about what each, no. Middle one, next one, thank you. About what each, yeah. We'll take a breath.
There was a delay, right. That's all.
I understand.
And I changed the slides on you last minute too. So
yeah. And yesterday we introduced a new member of the portfolio, but a kind of different one. Much of Tanzu is open source software, but it's been delivered with VMware Global Services in a subscription format. We are also now making it available, making some of the Tanzu portfolio and more as the upcoming months go by, available for free with no resource restrictions, free, direct download, no cost, no resource limits, no limits to 7 clusters, no, this is a 2 or 3 or 6 month time limited evaluation. This is free for your use, and you can use it just as the other Tanzu editions in your favorite cloud, either vSphere, AWS, or Azure, or you can use it on your local workstation, which is kind of where the conjunction point for today comes in. You can view the source and the whole project at the GitHub URL there. You can download it at that location. And next slide, please. I said that it fits in this portfolio. Well, the portfolio we have today with subscriptions are aimed at different practitioners for each edition. For virtual infrastructure admins, Tanzu Basic lets you simply run Kubernetes in a vSphere environment well integrated. If you want to run a general Kubernetes platform, especially across multiple clouds, then you step up to Tanzu Standard as a platform operator. But then for developers and for the whole development and application delivery lifecycle, we have Tanzu Advanced, which speeds app delivery, brings simplicity and security. Well, if we've identified these as being for practitioners, the question you might ask is, who's the practitioner that Community Edition is for? And the answer is all of them. This is the animation. Click. Everybody is invited to learn and use VMware Tanzu for free using Community Edition. And we recognize most people will put their critical applications in production in a professionally supported environment with service level agreements and so on. But for especially the personal development cycle, but even then for the outer loop, for some parts of the outer loop development where people collaborate, and maybe even for less critical applications, people will find Community Edition a great environment to run in. The key difference is not in terms of features, it's in terms of the support, where Community Edition is supported by the community. And that means you don't have a number to call, but you have a Slack channel in the Kubernetes Slack on which people are always involved. You have a Google group called Tanzu-Community-Edition. You have a website with lots of resources on it, tanzucommunityedition.io. I suggest you go there once and then bookmark it, because nobody should have to type that multiple times a day. But it's a different mode of support. And in fact, once you're using it and once you're comfortable with it, you may find your time supporting newbies and other folks with questions. Today was my day to be the newbie on some of the groups on the Slack channel. Was you want to join in and participate in the development, and we'll drive the development in community meetings that happen twice a month. We have office hours for you to just join a video conference and ask questions. Another twice a month on the alternate Wednesdays. So it's a different model, but it's a very strong one, especially for personal use, whether it's in your clouds or especially on your desktop. So
yeah,
here's yeah, go ahead.
This is the part where I changed all the slides around on you.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Here's another way to look at it. Today we have the 3 commercial editions, and they all consist of open source software, plus in the case of standard and advanced, there's some proprietary software, not really a lot, and they're managed services like Tanzu Mission Control and Tanzu Observability. Well, those features are not part of the of Community Edition, but Community Edition encompasses all of the open source components of all of those. Right now, it's more limited to the basic and standard ones, but we'll be adding some from advanced over the next few months. My puppy thinks that's a great idea. You might hear that in the background. Then we're extending it in 2 ways. The first way is that there are some of those managed services, some of those proprietary things that we are able to fill that function in using an open source model. For example, Tanzu Build Service is a proprietary tool, but much of the work of Tanzu Build Service can be performed by cloud native build packs using the KPack extension. So we're going to be bringing, not this month in the first release, but in the next couple of months, KPack in as a feature of Community Edition. So that's one way we do new things there. The second way is we're going to be leading, we're essentially the upstream of the commercial editions. So for example, if somebody releases a new version of Contour, the Ingress controller, or of Valero backup tool, we can ship the new versions and get users' hands on it a few months before we put it in a commercial edition. Another case would be we want to try out a new package and see how people like it and see if they suggest other things or alternatives before we commit to commercializing it. That's something that'll happen there. And then there are brand new features we'll be inventing there. And this is one of the things that makes Tanzu Community Edition, even the first release, really distinct, which is that we've added a new kind of cluster. If you know Tanzu at all, you know that the model it uses is based on a thing called Cluster API, which is what it uses to deploy infrastructure underneath. And Cluster API has a distinct model where it starts with a bootstrap cluster. The bootstrap cluster brings up a management cluster, and that management cluster deploys and manages workload clusters. Well, sometimes you want a cluster for 15 minutes or an hour. You want a cluster that's going to be one stage in a CI/CD pipeline, or you want a cluster that's going to come up to run a demo. Bringing up a management cluster to bring up that one workload cluster is kind of a pain. So we've innovated a new form and contributed to Cluster API called standalone clusters. And standalone clusters, instead of management cluster, then we shift. We deploy a cluster, we shift it to being management, and then we bring up workload. We just bring it up and don't do that pivot so that it can be a workload cluster. And I'm going to be showing standalone cluster a little later. Now, as Michael said, Kubernetes isn't the whole answer, right? You have the infrastructure, you have Kubernetes itself. We add some things to make Kubernetes more powerful to drive its environment. One thing is Cluster API, as I just talked about, managing the lifecycle of clusters. The other thing is a packaging system, basically bringing the form of package management you're used to in operating systems to the Kubernetes environment in a project called Carvel. And Carvel makes it as easy to bring in either component packages or your own applications in the same way that will be easily deployable from command line and manage dependencies and so on. This is what we ship right now as the full story. Well, sort of right now. These two guys are coming in a month or two. But you can pick which pieces are relevant to your environment. So there's a rich toolkit and recipes for how to deploy them. And these will grow and grow, and a rich application development environment will grow on top of this. If you've seen the recent announcements of Tanzu Application Platform, all of the open source components of Tanzu Application Platform that are coming in the next few months will also come into Community Edition. So we say Community Edition, and it takes having a community for that. I say we want to be known by our middle name. We provide a lot of resources that are not just software. There's hosted sandboxes. So even before you want to spin up your first cluster, you can go to our Learning Center and get clusters ready for you to use and fool around with. There's lots of short form resources on the Development Center, and there are long form, meaning full courses in Cube Academy. And as I said, we have the resources, the Slack channel, not in our private Slack, or the code Slack, but in the Kubernetes Slack, there is a Tanzu Community Edition channel. There's a Google group. We have office hours and community meetings, as I said earlier. And in these, you can engage directly with the development team, either to ask questions or make suggestions, give input as to the direction of the product. We'll be doing roadmap reviews quarterly in the meetings and helping us prioritize upcoming releases.
So this is all super exciting, and I just want to keep talking. But
yeah,
I think our folks here want to see some demo.
Let's do a little show.
We can accommodate.
Yeah, let's.
Let's
I think we've made the proper sacrifices, right? Let's see.
Oh, he's bringing that up. Let me see if I can take a look at the chat here.
Yeah. And where's my window? I know where this window is. It's where's my share button hiding? Okay. Yay, I think I can do it from here now. Yes. I'm going to give you a quick look. Don't get dizzy-fied by this. I just want to show you that we are running in Fusion. So this is my Mac desktop, and this window over here with the hippo in it is a window running Ubuntu in Fusion. And now that I've told you that, I'm going to.
I see you've got some snapshots there. You've been going back and forth a little bit.
Yep. We're going to do, as we've talked earlier, the Betty Crocker or the Martha Stewart approach, where we'll do something and then where an operation might take, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, something like that, we'll just whip the produced product out of the other oven and move on. But first I have to find that share button again. Oh, come on, Zoom. Excuse me, there we are. Okay. Forgot everything jumps back to the top. There we are. Don't you just love when people fumble through demos like this? So let me tell you what I've done to get to this point. I've deployed my Ubuntu VM. I have installed Docker in it following Docker website install instructions. I have installed kubectl or kube control or whatever your particular Kubernetes religion brings you to call it. I have installed also from Homebrew, by the way, the Tanzu command, and that's in the documentation on the community website. And now I'm going to run the command to bring up an interface that lets me specify the configuration, yay, of the, I wasn't nervous about that at all, right, folks? Lets you specify the configuration of the standalone cluster you want to create, and you can put it in vSphere where it asks a lot of, pretty significant configuration questions, the public clouds, but I'm going to go with Docker, A, because that's what I'm running, and B, because it asks far fewer questions. So it checks to see if the Docker daemon's running. If it's not, it gives you a little button here to bring it up with. And once it sees that it's running, it lets you fill in the name. And it asks for a couple of network settings. And from here, I could just start running with it. Okay, so now we'll go to the review configuration step. And I could either deploy it from here, or I could copy the command line command out of here and paste it in a terminal window. But I'm going to do neither of those because I'm going to switch to a snapshot in which things are already deployed.
Yeah, when I was setting this up last night, I was shocked with how long the setup takes. It's a big thing. Like getting the Kubernetes part is quick, but everything else that has to come along with it, it's an operation.
Yeah, there's some time here. We're working on optimizing various parts of that, and over time you'll see that not only in Community Edition, but coming into the commercial editions as well. But we've done a bunch of work there. We've said minutes, but in this case, even to the standalone cluster on Docker, minutes can be 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes just to get that standalone cluster up. So now I have the standalone cluster, and I'm going to get in the right window so that I can go back through my command lines. I think I'm going too far back through my command lines. Yeah, so let's let's look at adding, well, let's look at one interesting thing that you can do would be to add packages to this. So let's find some packages that we could add. And I'm going to type this in because I wish I had typed it before into my command line history. And I'm going to say Tanzu package. So package is the plugin that does everything with packages, which are the creatures formerly known as extensions or add-ons. And I'm going to add a repository. I'm going to give it a common name, TCE repo, and and I will put that in a namespace called Tanzu package repo global. And that works better if you actually remember the word repository. There we go.
And while that's running, Roger, real quick, roughly how much storage do you think that this would take in a typical case? Like in the case of a standalone, let's say.
Yeah, well, the clusters themselves, I mean, the storage you use is going to be dependent on the storage that the apps use. The clusters themselves are pretty lean. I used a 60 gig virtual disk for this, and root is filling up, but not the home space. So
nothing crazy.
Yeah, it's not for, but of course, if you're going to add a lot of development tools, you're going to add space for, and want to build lots of packages on local storage, then it's going to go up. And now we can see what packages there are. So so let's see the repository. And again, it helps to be able to spell. And there's, it's still, I think has storage issues in the root. But let's see what packages we have.
So maybe a little more than 60 gigs is what we're going to do.
Yeah, I was I couldn't remember what I had on this machine, but now that I think of it, I think I have like a 2 terabyte SSD, so I think I'm okay. However, here's another kind of cool thing that we've done. We've added some key operations right into the Tanzu command structure. So there's a conformance test which runs under the open source Sonoboy package that we've also led the project for. But you can run it right from the command line against, it's going to want to see, there we go. And it's going to want to run that against the current cluster, but it can just start it up from the command line and you can see that your cluster is in conformance. Rich options for creating workload clusters, management clusters, standalone clusters, as you see here, and for adding and configuring lots of packages to the environment. And as I said, over the next few months, look for many more developer tools to come into TCE Tanzu Community Edition. as well.
Well, thank you, Roger, for showing that. It's really, really exciting just to have all this coming together. And I think, aspirationally, we want to simplify this operation, right? Like we know that we've had great success getting super tiny with Kind and with Minikube on the desktop. And this is great because I see a future where, we have, machines, whether they've got ESX or whether they're Workstation or whether they're Fusion, you're going to be able to have some component of Tanzu on that and just paint the data center with it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And look for, we've been discussing more direct integration to the desktop as well. So
yeah, it was really good. Had a nice conversation with Joe Beta about it today, and it's just amazing to see all the interest. And we had to get this first, and we had to make sure that this was ready for something else to be able to consume it. And so that'll be the next leg of our journey for sure. But getting this far has certainly been no small feat. I know that this has been a project we've been working on for at least this entire year.
Yeah,
and it's just exciting to see it out now.
I joked I started January 4th. We released October 4th. That was exactly 9 months, which I don't think turns out to be a coincidence in terms of the life cycle.
And so, yeah, that's the extent of our presentation. Beyond that, we just had, Q&A and whatnot, but doesn't look like we have a lot of time left. We're kind of over, but absolutely on Twitter, we can find myself at Mike Roy Soft and Roger at Roger Clarice over on the tweets. And of course, we're going to be in the VM World Slack channel there, so you can add us and whatnot. But thanks everybody for joining. I really appreciate it. Roger, thanks so much for the great demo. And Eric, thanks for giving us the forum to be able to share our story.
Yeah, always good to have you here. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. I hope to be back.